Timothy Shaw's rifle rang out with a staccato of shots, putting neat holes through the skulls of 3 onrushing Ocampa guards. Their weapons blasted away at Shaw, but the fizzling pulses dissipated harmlessly against his tough human body armor, not even singeing the fabric. Shaw gritted his teeth, sprinting down the gleaming alloy hallways of the alien military research facility on planet Zeta Prime. Intel reports claimed the Ocampa eggheads here had developed a new superweapon, one that could supposedly take out any species in the galaxy. After the sneaky bastards hit the Columbus 9 colony, with no warning, Earth went on a war footing quick. Now every humans in the quadrant were relying on Shaw and his Spec Ops training to find out what the Ocampa were up to and shut them down hard. Another pair of guards popped out of a side passage, energy blasters flaring. Shaw dove and rolled, the searing bolts splashing against the bulkhead centimeters from his face. He came up in a crouch, his own kinetic carbine coughing twice. The guards smacked into the walls and slumped bonelessly. For supposedly invincible super soldiers, these Ocampa sure died easy. Intel said that weapon would work on humans specifically, so why the hell couldn't they scratch him? Questions for later. Shaw reached the target room, sliced through the lock with a plasma torch and rushed inside. Banks of alien computers whirred. He slotted a data spike, hit copy. "No," Shaw muttered, skimming the schematics flashing across his HUD. These weapons could genocide humanity in weeks if deployed, but the files showed human DNA provided complete immunity. Whatever mutant gene made humans so stubborn, it was about to save their asses again. Shaw yanked the data spike, info secured. He had to get this back to Earth. The survival of the species depended on it. As Shaw escaped into Zeta Prime's dusty ochre hills, a stealthed human dropship decloaked and touched down. The hatch hissed open, revealing the grinning face of Mark Rodriguez, Shaw's extraction team leader and oldest friend. "Cutting it a bit close there, eh, Tim?" Mark said, clapping Shaw on the shoulder as he boarded. Shaw dropped into a crash seat, catching his breath. Ocampa had some new toys, weapons designed to wipe us out specifically. He slotted the data spike into a reader, flashing the schematics. But get this, they don't work on humans at all. "Nah, man, look." Shaw gestured at his unmarked armor. "I'm telling you, they shot me dead on over and over, didn't leave a scratch." "Well, I'll be damned," Mark muttered. "Guess we better analyze this. If it's true, hell, maybe we finally found the Ocampa's weak spot." The ship touched down at Firebase Zulu, humanity's secret outpost hidden in Zeta Prime's moon. Shaw and Mark hustled the data to waiting science teams. "I still don't buy it," Mark said, shaking his head. "Come on, let's test this so-called immunity of yours." They headed to the armory's firing range. Mark grabbed an Ocampa blaster. "You sure about this, buddy?" Shaw just grinned, walking downrange without a word. He turned, spreading his arms wide. "This is crazy," Mark muttered. He raised the alien weapon, sighted center mass, and squeezed the trigger. Seething red bolts slammed into Shaw's armor and ricocheted away, pattering harmlessly into the sand. Shaw didn't even flinch. Shaw grabbed his rifle, adrenaline already pumping. "We'll figure it out later. Right now we hold the line. That data's the only thing that can save humanity now." The Ocampa ships roared down through Zeta Prime's ochre sky, disgorging gleaming troop transports that descended on the human base in swarms. The base's automated defenses opened up with flak cannons and missile salvos, filling the dusty air with explosions and debris. "Here they come!" Rodriguez shouted over the din of battle. He crouched behind a barricade, pulse rifle spitting red bolts at the oncoming Ocampa. "Shaw, take your squad and hit their left flank. Don't let them gain a foothold." Shaw nodded, signaling his men forward. They charged from cover to cover, carbines coughing. Shaw led the way, Ocampa fire pinging off his armor like hail. His blood sang with adrenaline and purpose. "Their weapons can't touch us," Shaw bellowed. "Hit 'em hard, hit 'em fast." Emboldened, Shaw's squad tore into the Ocampa ranks with ruthless efficiency. They advanced steadily, scything down the aliens with impunity. The Ocampa fell back in disarray before the humans' relentless assault. In the chaos, No one noticed a small Ocampa force cutting through a service tunnel into the heart of the base. The infiltrators emerged in the command center, catching the human officers by surprise. Pulse blasts cut down the commanders before they could even draw their sidearms. The Ocampa grabbed the stolen weapon data and vanished back into the tunnels. By the time anyone realized what had happened, they were gone. "Damn it!" Rodriguez punched the wall in frustration. "All our work snatched right out from under us." "Not for long," Shaw growled. "Saddle up, Mark. We're going hunting." They gathered the best scouts and trackers on the base, then set out into Zeta Prime's jagged hills, following the Ocampa's ion trail. Shaw pressed the team on mercilessly, not stopping for rest or recon. As dusk fell, they spotted an Ocampa shuttle still venting heat from re-entry. Shaw signaled a halt, peering through macro binoculars. 6 tangos, maybe more inside the ship. No way we get close without being spotted. "So what's the play?" Mark asked. Shaw checked his rifle, jaw set with grim purpose. "I'll go in loud, get their attention. You and the boys circle around, hit 'em from the rear. Get that data back no matter what. Copy." But Shaw was already moving, storming down the ridge with a roar of challenge. Ocampa pulse blasts hammered his armor as he closed the distance. Shaw returned fire on the run, rifle barking. He rolled into cover behind a boulder, shots cracking around him. "Come on, you scaly bastards," Shaw howled. "You want some? Come and get it!" Knives flashed in the dark. Ocampa gurgled and fell. The squad stormed the shuttle, catching the pilot before he could cycle the engines. Mark snatched the data drive, tucking it away. Shaw allowed himself a tight grin. He put a final burst into the last twitching Ocampa, then joined his team. "Got it?" he asked. Mark held up the drive with a nod. "Knew I could count on you. Let's get this intel back to base." As the weary humans boarded the captured shuttle, Shaw clapped Mark on the back. "Nice work back there. Guess we still make a pretty good team, huh?" "Best in the business," Mark agreed. "Those Ocampa pricks have no idea what's coming for them." Back at the hidden moon base orbiting Zeta Prime, Shaw slammed his fist on the briefing room table. Weapon schematics and data readouts glowed on the displays around him. "The Ocampa weapons facility on Sigma 9, he growled. "We hit it hard, hit it fast. Cripple their production line before they can churn out any more of these damn gene killers." Rodriguez frowned, looking over the intel. "Place is a fortress, Tim. Anti-air batteries, motion sensors, DNA-locked security. We'd never get a team inside." Murmurs rippled through the assembled soldiers. Rodriguez shook his head vehemently. "There is no other way," Shaw snapped. "Every second we wait, the Ocampa get closer to wiping us out. This is our shot to turn the tide." He met Rodriguez's eyes, tone softening. "I'm the only one who can do this, Mark. You know it's true." Rodriguez sighed heavily, looking away. "Damn it, Tim, I don't like it, but you're right, we can't afford to wait." Shaw nodded grimly. "Prep a stealth shuttle and give me a ride. I'll take it from there." 3 days later, Shaw crouched in the jagged obsidian hills of Sigma 9, macro binoculars pressed to his eyes. Below, the Ocampa weapons plant squatted like an armored beetle, bristling with plasma cannons. "I'm in position," Shaw murmured into his calm. "Wish me luck." "You don't need luck," Rodriguez's voice crackled back. "Give 'em hell, buddy. We'll be waiting to extract you once the fireworks start." Shaw synced his HUD to the facility blueprints, mapping his route. He crept down the ridge, darting between boulders to avoid the sweeping sensor beams. At the perimeter fence, Shaw slapped a disc-shaped jammer on the humming shield pylon. It whined, then flashed green. A gap fizzled open in the energy barrier. Shaw sprinted through, rolling into the shadows of a storage hangar. Voices barked in guttural Ocampa from ahead. Shaw unslung his rifle, checking the magazine of EMP grenades. 2 guards stalked into view, pulse blasters held loosely at their sides. Shaw leapt out, cracking the stock of his gun across the first Ocampa's face. Bone crunched. The second guard yelped, bringing his weapon up. Shaw kicked it aside, then smashed an elbow into the Ocampa's throat. It gurgled and crumpled. Moving swiftly, Shaw stripped the guard's DNA-encoded access badges and palm-printed their limp hands against the door scanner. It chimed, clicking open. Shaw slipped inside the main factory floor, a cavernous space filled with robotic assembly lines and towering fabricators. Partially completed weapons glinted under harsh white lights. Ducking low, Shaw wove between the machines, planting demolition charges at critical junctures. The chemical sniffers and biometric scanners ignored him, registering his presence as Ocampa. As Shaw rounded a corner, he froze. A holographic schematic rotated in the air above a workstation, showing a strange new rifle. Lines of alien text crawled alongside it. Shaw's translation software passed the words, and a chill ran down his spine. This wasn't just a species targeting weapon. It could be tuned to an individual's genetic code, the perfect assassination tool. Jaw clenched, Shaw downloaded the schematic to his suit's data drive. Command needed to see this fast. The last charge planted, Shaw sprinted for the exit. Alarms began to blare. He'd been detected. Pulse blasts scorched the air around him as he ran, Ocampa soldiers pouring into the factory. Shaw jinked and rolled, letting his armor absorb the hits. He dove through the outer doors just as a tremendous explosion rocked the facility. Flames gouted into the sky. Secondary blasts rippled through the building, each charge igniting in turn. Shaw tore down the hill, not stopping until he reached the exfiltration point. Rodriguez's shuttle decloaked, hatch yawning open. "Hell of a fireworks show," Rodriguez shouted over the roar of the engines as Shaw leaped aboard. "You okay?" Shaw just nodded, still catching his breath. He pulled the data drive, handing it over. "We got a problem," he said grimly. "The Ocampa are taking this to a whole new level. We need to analyze this fast, or next time it won't just be humans they're targeting, it'll be individuals." Rodriguez blanched as he skimmed the schematic. He met Shaw's eyes, a leaden weight settling in his gut. "Looks like this war just got a lot more personal." Rodriguez plugged the data drive into the base's secure analysis terminal, lines of alien code spilling across the screen. Shaw paced behind him, armor still scorched from the factory infiltration. "There," Rodriguez stabbed a finger at the display. "Every research file references this Antares. Whoever they are, they're the brains behind these Ocampa gene weapons." Shaw scowled. "Can we track them down?" "Give me a minute." Rodriguez's fingers flew over the keyboard, parsing data. "Got it. Antares operates from a black site lab, coordinates encrypted. Looks like only the highest level Ocampa brass have clearance." "Which means that lab will be locked up tighter than a Dexalon's asshole," Shaw muttered. "But it's our only play. We can't let Antares finish this weapon." Rodriguez nodded grimly. "I'll assemble a strike team, small and fast. We go in quiet, snatch the good doctor right out from under the Ocampa's nose." Shaw clasped his friend's shoulder. "I'm with you, Mark. Let's finish this." 3 days later, Shaw crouched beside Rodriguez in the belly of a stealth dropship, hurtling through Ocampa space. The rest of the infiltration team checked weapons and gear, faces tight with focus. "Antares lab dead ahead," the pilot called. Scans show defensive cannons and a battalion strength guard force. "Take us in low and quiet," Rodriguez ordered. "Get us as close as you can." The ship whined, cloak shimmering as it sliced through the night sky. It settled into a shadowed ravine half a click from the lab entrance. "Move out," Shaw signaled, "and stay sharp. Antares will have new toys waiting for us." The team activated light-bending camouflage and advanced in a silent wedge. They slipped past patrolling Ocampa soldiers, hugging the jagged obsidian walls. At the lab's blast doors, Shaw nodded to the team's slicer. She knelt, planting a hackspike on the lock. It beeped twice, then flashed green. "We're in," she whispered. Weapons ready, the team filed into the lab's stark white halls. Shaw took point, scanning for targets. A piercing alarm split the air. Doors crashed down, sealing the corridor. "It's a trap," Rodriguez shouted. "Antares knew we were coming." Panels slid open in the walls and ceiling, revealing glowing turrets. They hummed to life, spitting sizzling energy bolts. "Cover," Shaw barked. The team scattered, diving behind support struts. The turrets fired with vicious precision, tracking the humans' heat signatures. Bolts hammered Shaw's armor, burning through the ceramic plating. "Son of a bitch," he snarled in pain. "These weapons can hurt me." "Antares must have cracked your DNA," Rodriguez yelled. "We need to move now." Laying down covering fire, the team leapfrogged forward, racing for the lab's heart. Shaw shrugged off the searing pain, adrenaline surging. He had to reach Antares. One by one, the turrets fell to the humans' hail of EMP grenades and plasma fire. The team stacked up outside the central lab chamber, breath ragged. "Antares is in there," Shaw growled. "I'm going in. Mark, watch my back." Rodriguez nodded tightly. Shaw kicked the door, rifle snapping up. A tall, gaunt Ocampa stood at a gleaming work console back to the door. He turned slowly, face splitting in a cold grin. "Welcome, Mr. Shaw," Antares said calmly. "I've been expecting you." A dozen armor-clad Ocampa soldiers materialized from active camouflage, weapons leveled at Shaw. He froze, mind racing. "So you've led your friends to die," Antares continued. "Did you think your genetic distinctiveness would protect you forever?" He lifted a strange, sleek rifle from the console, aiming it at Shaw's heart. Shaw's arm blurred. A micro-EMP grenade flashed from his hand, sticking to the rifle barrel. Never underestimate human reflexes. The grenade detonated in a pulse of blue light. Antares' weapon sparked and died. Shaw and Rodriguez opened fire as one, cutting down the Ocampa guards. Antares lurched for a panic button. Shaw stood over the corpse, rifle smoking. He turned to Rodriguez, exhaustion and elation warring on his face. "We did it. It's over. Ocampa won't forget this, Tim. You know that, right?" Shaw ejected a spent ammo clip, jaw set. "Neither will we. Whatever else they throw at us, we'll beat it. That's what humans do." He looked out at the stars, grim determination in his eyes. The war was far from over, but as long as Shaw and humanity stood together, the Ocampa would never triumph. The galaxy would be free. Shaw's arm blurred. The micro-EMP grenade flashed from his hand, sticking to Antares' rifle barrel. The grenade detonated in a pulse of crackling blue light. Antares' species-specific weapons sparked and died, rendered useless. Antares snarled in furious disbelief. He lunged for a backup sidearm, but Shaw was faster. The human operative smashed the butt of his rifle into Antares' face. Bone crunched. The Ocampa scientist crumpled, out cold. "Antares is down," Shaw barked into his calm. "Rodriguez, secure the prisoner. Everyone else, lock down this lab." The human strike team burst into action, sweeping the room with ruthless efficiency. They zip-tied the unconscious Ocampa guards and dragged Antares' limp body to a holding cell. Rodriguez grabbed a data drive from the central console, skimming the dense lines of alien code. His eyes widened. "Shaw, this is big," he said urgently. "Antares wasn't working alone. These files reference a whole cabal of Ocampa bigwigs, scientists, generals, the works." "A secret society pulling the strings, huh?" Shaw muttered. "Guess we know who's really behind these targeted weapons." "There's more," Rodriguez continued grimly. "Looks like this cabal's been around for decades, and their end goal is a hell of a lot bigger than just military dominance." Shaw's jaw clenched. "How much bigger are we talking?" "Try the complete subjugation of the human race. These freaks want payback for something that went down between our species centuries ago. The gene weapons are just the start." A cold weight settled in Shaw's gut. He met Rodriguez's gaze, a shared sense of grim determination passing between them. "Then I guess we better get to work," Shaw said, slamming a fresh power cell into his rifle. "Because if this cabal gets their way, it won't just be humans on the chopping block. It'll be every race in the galaxy." Using the data extracted from Antares' lab, Shaw and his team began systematically dismantling the Ocampa cabal's operations. They raided weapons caches, sabotaged communications hubs, and intercepted supply shipments. At each strike, Shaw and his squad leveraged their immunity to the Ocampa's gene-targeted arsenal. They walked through storms of pulse fire unscathed, their armor shrugging off the searing bolts. The Cabal's forces fell before them like wheat to a scythe. But even as they tightened the noose around the Cabal's neck, Shaw couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. The Ocampa's attacks grew more frantic, more reckless. They threw waves of troops and experimental weapons at the human team, heedless of their own casualties. It was almost as if they were stalling for time. That suspicion crystallized into cold dread when a decrypted data packet hit Shaw's HUD. It was a fragmentary communique between two of the Cabal's senior leaders, and though most of it was gibberish, two words leaped out at him. Omega Protocol. "Tell me you saw that," Rodriguez said over a private channel, voice tight. "Yeah," Shaw replied, dread coiling in his stomach, "and I'm guessing it's nothing good." He signaled the team to fall back to their stealth shuttle. They needed to regroup and figure out their next move, because if his hunch was right, the Cabal's Omega Protocol made their gene-targeted weapons look like water pistols. As the shuttle tore through the star-flecked void, Shaw pored over every scrap of decrypted Ocampa data they'd managed to scrape together. The more he read, the more his unease deepened into full-blown horror. The fragmented files hinted at something called Project Terminus, an endgame scenario that would completely reshape the galactic balance of power. But the specifics remained maddeningly out of reach, cloaked in layers of alien encryption. Rodriguez frowned thoughtfully. What about Antares? That bastard was in deep with the Cabal's senior leadership. If anyone knows the truth about Omega Protocol, it's him. Shaw nodded slowly. It's a long shot, but I guess we're all out of short ones. He turned to the shuttle pilot. Set course for Firebase Zulu. It's time we had a little chat with our Ocampa friend. In a stark white holding cell deep within Firebase Zulu, Shaw and Rodriguez faced their prisoner. Antares sat shackled to a titanium chair, his once pristine lab uniform rumpled and stained. He glared at the humans with cold, imperious disdain. "Come to gloat, have you?" the Ocampa sneered. "Revel in your little victories while you can. They won't matter in the end." Shaw leaned in close, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "The only thing that matters is what you're going to tell us. Omega Protocol, Project Terminus, what are they?" Antares barked a harsh laugh. "You really think I'd betray my people's greatest triumph? I'll die before I submit to human interrogation." "Funny you should mention that," Rodriguez said coldly, "because the way I see it, you've got two options. Tell us what we want to know, or we'll find out anyway, after we drag every last secret screaming from your mind." To punctuate his point, Rodriguez held up a gleaming neural extractor, its vicious-looking probes catching the harsh light. Antares paled, his haughty facade cracking. "You wouldn't dare," he hissed. "Your feeble notions of morality would never allow such barbarism." Shaw smiled thinly. "See, that's the thing about us humans. When the stakes are high enough, when the fate of our entire species hangs in the balance, we can stomach a whole lot of barbarism." He nodded to Rodriguez. The other operative stepped forward, neural extractor humming to life. Antares recoiled, straining against his bonds. Fear shone in his eyes. "Wait, I'll tell you what you want to know." "Start talking," Shaw ordered. "And if I think you're holding back even for a second—" He glanced meaningfully at the extractor. Antares slumped in his chair, defeated. When he spoke, his voice was hollow. "Omega Protocol, Project Terminus, they're the same thing. A final solution to the human problem." He met Shaw's gaze, a flicker of defiance returning. "Did you really think we'd stop at gene-targeted weapons? They were just the beginning." The Cabal's true goal is far grander in scope. For centuries they've worked in secret to engineer the ultimate bioweapon, a genocidal plague tailor-made to eradicate humanity down to the last man, woman, and child. Antares smiled grimly. "And now, after decades of tireless research, Project Terminus is finally ready. Once it's unleashed, the human infestation will be purged from the galaxy, forever." Rodriguez and Shaw exchanged a stunned, horrified glance. The scope of the Cabal's plan was monstrous beyond imagining. Shaw turned back to Antares, barely contained rage simmering beneath his words. "Where is it? Where's Terminus?" The captive Ocampa shook his head. "It doesn't matter. You're far too late to stop it. By now the countdown has already begun. When the red giant Betelgeuse goes supernova in 3 days' time, the end of humanity will follow." Shaw's blood turned to ice in his veins. Betelgeuse. One of the Cabal's communiques had mentioned that star, but he dismissed it as an astrographic reference. Now the terrifying truth clicked into place. "So that's the trigger," he said hoarsely. "The supernova will catalyze the plague, spread it across half the quadrant." "Only half?" Rodriguez asked, brow furrowed. Antares laughed bitterly. "Of course, we're not fools. Once humanity is extinct, the Cabal will need room to expand, to build the Ocampa Empire on the ashes of mankind." Shaw's hands clenched into fists, his knuckles whitening. 3 days. In 3 days his entire species would burn, consumed by an engineered inferno of disease and stellar fire. He grabbed Antares by the front of his prison smock, yanking him to his feet. The Ocampa yelped in pain and surprise. "You're going to tell us everything," Shaw snarled. "Every scrap of data you have on Project Terminus, how it works, how to counter it." Antares shook his head frantically. I don't know the details. Only the Cabal's inner circle has access to—" Shaw cut him off with a ruthless headbutt. Cartilage crunched. Antares howled, dark blood streaming from his ruined nose. "Then you'd better point us in the right direction," Shaw growled, "because one way or another we're going to end this. And God help you if you're in our way when we do." Shaw scoured the Ocampa archives, digging through centuries of history. A pattern emerged, hidden beneath propaganda and revisionism. Hundreds of years ago, human colonists had landed on the sacred Ocampa world of Aurelia, thinking it uninhabited. They'd built settlements right on top of ancient Ocampa burial sites and temples, desecrating the most holy ground of the Ocampa people. When the Ocampa discovered the sacrilege, they attacked without mercy. The human colonists never stood a chance. Every last man, woman, and child was slaughtered as the Ocampa unleashed their fury and pain. The feud had raged ever since, each side visiting bloody retribution on the other. Shaw sat back, realization dawning. This was the key, the original sin that sparked the hatred between their peoples. To end this war, he had to find a way to atone for the past, build a bridge over the blood and grief. He reached out to Talira, a member of the moderate Ocampa faction who had grown disillusioned with the Cabal's warmongering. In secret communiques, they hatched a plan, a meeting on neutral ground between Shaw and the Cabal leadership to find a path to peace. Shaw's team balked at the idea. It screamed trap, but he convinced them it was the only way, a real chance to stop the bloodshed once and for all. The meeting was arranged on Talos 7th, a barren rock ignored by all sides. Shaw and his team touched down, weapons ready. Talira waited at the coordinates, robes flapping in the thin wind. "Thank you for coming," she said, relief in her large eyes. "I know it wasn't easy to—" A hiss of pulse blasts cut her off. Searing red bolts stitched the ground as Shaw's team dove for cover. Dozens of Ocampa soldiers in jet-black armor materialized from active camouflage, rifles flaring. "Ambush," Rodriguez snarled, returning fire. "Talira sold us out." "No," Talira screamed, caught in the open. "I didn't, I swear I—" A bolt took her in the chest. She crumpled, blood pooling beneath her. Shaw cursed, rolling behind a boulder as shots scorched the air. The Ocampa had planned this from the start, lured them in, and now his team would pay the price. Pulse blasts hammered Shaw's cover, superheating the rock. He blind-fired back, kinetic rounds sparking off the Ocampa's armor. They advanced in tight formation, energy shields rippling. Shaw's rifle clicked dry. He slapped in a fresh mag, mind racing. They had to get out of here, find better ground. He keyed his comm. "Fall back by teams, covering fire." Half his squad laid down a blistering barrage as the others sprinted to new positions. Then they switched, leapfrogging back. The Ocampa pursued with ruthless discipline, shrugging off casualties. They weren't just elite warriors, Shaw realized. They had upgraded gear. Armor resistant to kinetic impact, weapons that burned through human cover like tissue paper. His immunity suddenly felt small comfort. As if sensing his thoughts, a hail of searing red blasts converged on Shaw. He dove aside, a microsecond too slow. Bolts hammered his armor, ceramic plating shattering, flesh sizzled. Shaw screamed. He hit the ground hard, vision flashing white. His nerves shrieked in agony. Shaw forced himself to move, to crawl, couldn't stop, had to. A shadow fell across him. Shaw looked up at an Ocampa in ornate armor, looming over his prone body. Facial tattoos marked the alien as a battlemaster, the warlord. So falls the legendary Timothy Shaw, the Ocampa sneered, the human who thought himself invincible. The warlord aimed his rifle between Shaw's eyes, finger tightening on the trigger. My name is Craxus. I want you to know before you die that I will savor your species' extinction. I will carve the name of every Ocampa your ancestors wronged into human flesh. The debt of blood will be paid. Shaw glared up at him, defiant to the end. He gathered the last of his strength, coiling his body to strike at Craxus' legs. If he could just throw off the bastard's aim. A roar split the air. Automatic fire raked the Ocampa line. Craxus staggered back, shields crackling. Shaw rolled to his feet, snatching up his rifle. He put a burst into the reeling warlord, armor-piercing rounds finally punching through the enhanced plating. Craxus hit the ground, dark blood pooling beneath him. He glared balefully at Shaw, chest heaving with wet, rattling breaths. "This changes are nothing," the warlord hissed. "Terminus is coming. Your species will burn, as ours did." The light faded from Craxus's eyes. Shaw looked to the ridgeline, heart pounding. A familiar silhouette waved. "Thought you could use a hand," Rodriguez called, hefting his auto rifle. The rest of Shaw's team emerged from the rocks, cutting down the last of the Ocampa with precise fire. Shaw allowed himself a tight grin. His people always had his back, even in the 11th hour. He knelt beside Craxus's corpse, pulling a data drive from the armor. A map flashed on his HUD, coordinates deep in Ocampa space. "Got a lead on Terminus," Shaw said, jaw tight. "Let's finish this for Talira, for everyone." Rodriguez nodded grimly. No matter how many Ocampa stood in their way, humanity would prevail. They had to. The alternative was too terrible to imagine. Shaw gritted his teeth, plasma bolts sizzling past his head. The Ocampa warlord stood across the battlefield, bellowing orders to his troops. Shaw knew this cycle of violence would never end, not unless someone broke the chain. "Cover me," Shaw shouted to Rodriguez. "What are you doing?" Rodriguez yelled back, ducking as a pulse blast scorched the rock beside him. He vaulted over the barricade, sprint rolling to dodge the hail of fire. His armor deflected glancing hits, integrity alarms shrieking. Shaw zigzagged through the chaos, never slowing, never breaking stride. The warlord saw him coming, snarled something in guttural Ocampa, leveling his disruptor rifle. Shaw spread his arms wide, a gesture of parley, of truce. "I am Timothy Shaw," he called out, voice steady. "I'm here to talk, to end this bloodshed." The warlord's lip curled in a sneer. "You dare lecture me, human, after all your species has done?" "I know your pain," Shaw said. "I know the injustice your ancestors suffered. The temples burned, the graves defiled." He took a step closer, palms still raised. "But this isn't justice, it's vengeance, and vengeance only breeds more vengeance." The warlord struck like a serpent, closed the distance in a heartbeat, disruptor pressed to Shaw's throat. "I should kill you where you stand," he hissed. "Paint the ground with your blood." Shaw met his eyes unflinchingly. "Then your children will kill my children, and their children after that, on and on forever." He gestured to the battlefield, to the wounded and the dying. "Is this the future you want, an endless cycle of suffering?" For a long moment the warlord was silent, finger tense on the trigger. Then slowly he lowered his weapon. "What would you have me do, human?" he asked. voice heavy with centuries of grief. "How do we break this circle of hatred?" "Peace," Shaw said simply. "A new beginning for both our peoples. But it starts here with us, laying down our arms, choosing to forgive." All around them, the fighting began to slacken. Soldiers on both sides listening, hesitating. The leader of the Ocampa moderates stepped forward, hands raised in supplication. "The human is right," she said to the warlord. "Too much blood has been spilled. It must end." She turned to Shaw. "If you speak truly, we will help you. We will rebuild what was lost, make amends for the past." For a long, tense moment, the warlord wavered, the old hatreds warring with the promise of a better tomorrow. At last he nodded. Let his disruptor fall to the ground. "Very well," he said heavily. "I will consider your words, for my people if not for yours." Shaw clasped the warlord's arm, a warrior's salute. "That's all I ask, a chance for peace." As word spread, the battle petered out. Soldiers laid down arms, tended to the fallen. Shaw and Rodriguez coordinated a ceasefire, set up negotiations between the factions. It was a start, a fragile first step on a long road. But after centuries of war, even a single step felt like a miracle. In the days that followed, Shaw worked tirelessly to broker a lasting treaty, pored over ancient star charts and archaeological surveys, pinpointing the sites of desecrated Ocampa temples, coordinated joint teams to restore the ruins, human and Ocampa alike. Trust grew slowly, a delicate seedling nurtured by patience and goodwill. Piece by piece, the old animosities began to heal, to scab over. But not everyone wanted peace. In shadowed corners of the galaxy, an insidious rot festered. Nyx and her extremists, the bitterest of the bitter. They saw reconciliation as betrayal, a surrender of sacred grievances. And so they plotted, planned, sowed seeds of discord and fear, seeking to unravel the fledgling peace. Their chance came on the eve of the treaty signing. A grand ceremony meant to seal the new alliance, transmit it across the stars. Fire and shrapnel ripped through the gathering, scything down human and Ocampa alike. Screams filled the air, mingled with the staccato bark of weapons fire. Shaw hit the ground, ears ringing. He tasted blood, felt the sting of a dozen lacerations, staggered to his feet, searching desperately for Rodriguez in the smoke and chaos. All around him, the fragile peace shattered like glass, the fruit of months of labor spoiled in an instant of brutality. As he stumbled through the carnage, Shaw's comm crackled to life, a cold, harsh voice thick with malice. "Did you really think it would be so easy, Shaw?" Nyx mocked. "That you could erase centuries of justified retribution with a few pretty words?" Shaw's hand clenched into a fist. He glared at the flames, the broken bodies. But deep in his heart a cold dread settled. The peace he had fought so hard to build lay in ashes. And the cycle of vengeance threatened to begin anew, more vicious than ever before. As the ashes of the ceasefire scattered in the wind, Shaw clenched his jaw. Nyx's bombing at the treaty signing was a declaration of war, a brutal statement that peace would never reign, while her extremist faction drew breath. Shaw gathered his team, still battered from the ambush. "This isn't over," he growled. "Nyx is still out there, and as long as she is, no one's safe. Not human, not Ocampa. We're ending this. Now." Working with their newfound Ocampa allies, Shaw and his operatives pored over every scrap of intel, every whisper and rumor of Nyx's whereabouts. They questioned captured extremists, traced encoded transmissions, followed tenuous leads across the stars. Piece by piece, a pattern emerged from the chaos. Supply manifests for advanced bioengineering equipment, communiques laced with fanatical rhetoric, and a name whispered with reverence and fear: Nyx. The trail led them to the fringes of Ocampa space, to a nameless planet cloaked in secrecy. As their stealth shuttle approached, Shaw knew they had found Nyx's stronghold. "Arm up," he ordered grimly. "Shoot to kill, no mercy." They descended through howling winds and searing plasma storms, the planet's turbulent atmosphere, a reflection of the violence to come. The shuttle touched down on a jagged plateau, its obsidian surface scarred by ancient battles. Shaw and his team moved out, weapons primed. Scans showed a massive underground complex shielded against orbital bombardment. Nix was ready for war. As if on cue, a horde of fanatical Ocampa extremists boiled out from hidden bunkers, screaming battle cries. They charged across the razor-sharp rock, firing searing energy bolts from their weapons. Shaw dove into cover, his rifle already barking. Ocampa warriors fell, their lifeless bodies tumbling into the abyss. But more surged forward, heedless of the losses. Each one was willing to die for Nix's twisted cause. "Push forward," Shaw roared over the chaos. "Get inside that compound." They advanced through the teeth of the enemy's fire, Ocampa blood staining the ground. Shaw led the way, kinetic rounds sparking off his armor. His immunity made him a one-man vanguard, an unstoppable force. As they neared the compound's blast doors, the resistance intensified. Nix's elite guard poured from the honeycombed tunnels, clad in obsidian exoskeletons bristling with firepower. Shaw and his team met them head-on, no longer caring about their own safety. They had to reach Nix, had to end her reign of terror before it engulfed the galaxy. Inside the stronghold, Shaw raced through the labyrinthine corridors, following the pulse of malevolent energy emanating from the central lab. He could feel Nix's presence, a black sun of hatred and obsession. He kicked down the final door, rifle leveled, and there she was. Nix stood amidst a nest of pulsing biomachinery, her face a mask of cruel triumph. In her hand, she clutched a strange, ominous-looking device. "You're too late, Shaw," she crowed. "Behold the Omega strain, a genophage that will cleanse the galaxy of all who oppose Ocampa supremacy." Shaw's finger tightened on the trigger. "It's over, Nix. You've lost." Her laughter was like shattered glass. "No, fool, I've already won." She pressed a button on the device. Red lights flashed, sirens shrieked. The Omega strain pulsed with malevolent life. Shaw charged, a wordless battle cry on his lips. He slammed into Nix, knocking the device from her grasp. They grappled like primal beasts, pitting enhanced strength against reinforced bone and sinew. Nix's blows hammered Shaw's face, his chest staggering him, but he pushed through the pain, retaliating with savage fury. They smashed through the lab in a whirlwind of destruction, each driven by their own implacable will. Even with his immunity, Shaw felt his strength waning. Nix was relentless, a demon possessed. She pinned him against the wall, fingers locked around his throat. "Die, human filth," she snarled. "Die so Ocampa may live." Shaw's vision swam. His lungs screamed for air. With a final burst of desperate strength, he brought his knee up into Nix's groin. Bone crunched. She howled in agony, her grip slackening. Shaw pushed her away, staggering to the fallen Omega strain. He scooped it up, fingers flying over the controls. He had to neutralize it, had to... A plasma bolt scorched the air beside his head. Nix had recovered her weapon, her face contorted with murderous rage. Shaw rolled away. The device clutched to his chest. He could hear the rest of his team fighting their way closer, drawn by the sounds of battle. If he could just hold out a little longer. The lab shook with a sudden, terrible explosion. Shaw looked up, dread clutching his heart. Nix stood at the room's center, a detonator in her hand. The walls cracked. Noxious gas vented from shattered pipes. The world tilted. Fire blossomed. Shaw felt himself lifted from the ground, hurled through the air by a concussive blast. He slammed into the far wall, bones snapping like dry twigs. Through a red haze of pain, he saw Rodriguez sprinting towards him, desperation etched on his face. The rest of the team was close behind, fighting through the rubble. "Go!" Rodriguez shouted, hauling Shaw to his feet. "Get out of here, I'll hold them off." Shaw shook his head groggily. No, I won't leave you." But Rodriguez was already turning away, storming back into the inferno with a defiant roar. Plasma bolts sizzled past him, clawing at his armor. The last thing Shaw saw before the darkness claimed him was his friend, his brother, standing alone against the tide of fanatical Ocampa. A hero to the bitter end. In the years that followed Nix's defeat, Shaw threw himself into the hard work of rebuilding the shattered trust between humans and Ocampa. He shuttled tirelessly between worlds, brokering treaties, overseeing joint projects, always striving to weave a lasting peace from the bloody tapestry of history. But even as new bonds were forged, Shaw couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. Troubling reports filtered in, Ocampa extremists vanishing without a trace, only to resurface later with no memory of their prior radicalism. Hushed whispers spoke of a shadowy puppet master known as the Architect, a faceless figure manipulating events from the depths of space. Shaw dug deeper, chasing down every scrap of intel. The clues led him to a horrifying revelation. The Architect was Antares. The twisted genius had cheated death, and now harbored an even deadlier ambition. Gone were the gene-tailored bioweapons. Antares had unlocked a new frontier, neurotech, legions of unwitting pawns, their minds enslaved by insidious implants, danced to his tune. Human, Ocampa, it mattered not. All were just tools for Antares' galactic endgame. Her cold dread settled in Shaw's gut. Antares was a cancer that had to be cut out, no matter the cost. Gathering a hand-picked team of crack operatives, both human and Ocampa, Shaw set out for Antares' hidden citadel, an anonymous asteroid base, unremarkable amid the void. They came in hard and fast, dropships screaming through a gauntlet of autoguns and missile batteries. Shaw led the charge, kinetic rifle barking, cutting down waves of mind-wiped thralls with cold precision. Antares' inner sanctum was a nightmare of pulsing neurotech and flashing diodes. At its heart stood the Architect himself, a mad idol presiding over banks of humming machinery. "You're too late, Shaw," Antares cackled. "My network is already active. Soon every mind in the galaxy will be bent to my will." Shaw charged, armor shrugging off sizzling energy beams. He crashed into Antares, sending them tumbling in a ruthless tangle of flesh and metal. Consoles shattered, implants sparked. Shaw pummeled the Ocampa, rage and desperation fueling every blow. With a final titanic effort, Shaw smashed the neurotech's control core, feeling the psychic shockwave as a billion minds snapped back to themselves. Antares slumped, neck broken, mad light fading from his eyes. Shaw staggered back, taking in the smoking ruin, the bodies of friends and foes alike strewn across the wreckage. In that moment, he understood the true cost of his crusade. The walk back to the dropship was the longest of his life. There would be no celebration, no triumphant return, only a lonely path to an uncertain future. As he watched the asteroid dwindle to a pinprick behind him, Shaw made a vow. Though Antares was gone, his toxic legacy remained. Suspicion, division, the embers of hate. Healing those wounds would take a lifetime, and Shaw would gladly spend his to make it right. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.